I never imagined that a single sentence could completely shatter the life I'd built for 12 years. I never thought the man with whom I'd shared dreams, plans, and a bed for over a decade would be capable of looking me in the eye and uttering such devastating words. But that's exactly what happened on an ordinary Tuesday, while I was making dinner in our kitchen in Denver. Ethan came home from work with an expression I knew all too well, the face of someone who had made a decision on his own and expected me to just quietly accept it. He didn't even take off his coat, didn't give me a kiss like he usually did. He just planted himself in the kitchen doorway and fired the shot. "Sarah, make sure the house is spotless. My sister just had her baby and she's going to live here for 6 months, so you can take care of the kid." My spoon stopped midair. The onions and garlic sizzled in the pan. The world seemed to freeze for a few seconds, as my brain processed what I just heard. He wasn't asking. He wasn't suggesting. He wasn't even consulting my opinion. He was informing me of a decision already made, as if I were an employee in my own home. I've been a teacher for 15 years. I get up every day at 5:30 a.m. to be at school by 7 a.m. I spend my entire day managing fourth graders, grading homework, planning lessons, and dealing with busy parents and demanding principals. I get home at 5 p.m., dead tired, but I still cook dinner, take care of the house, do the laundry, iron. Weekends are for deep cleaning, grocery shopping, and preparing school materials. And now he wanted me to add a newborn baby to this already exhausting routine, to become his sister's nanny for half a year, without even asking if I agreed, if I was physically and emotionally up for it, if our budget could even handle feeding 2 more people. I took a deep breath before answering, trying to stay calm. "Ethan, can we talk about this? This isn't a simple decision. I work all day." He cut me off before I could finish. "There's nothing to talk about, Sarah. Jess needs help with Leo, and you're the only person in the family who can give it to her. She'll be here on Sunday." It was Thursday. That meant I had exactly 3 days to mentally prepare myself to host a person I barely knew, along with a baby who would cry all night, disrupt my routine, and turn our home into complete chaos. Jess was always a mystery to me. 5 years younger than Ethan, she worked as a nail technician at a salon downtown. In the few family gatherings I'd attended, she was always a bit distant, cold towards me. She'd answer my attempts at conversation with one-word replies, avoid eye contact, and just seemed irritated by my presence. I chalked it up to her being reserved, or maybe a little jealous of her older brother. But now, reflecting on those memories as I mechanically stirred the onions, some strange details started to connect in my mind. The times Ethan left to solve a problem for Jess and took hours to come back. The whispered phone calls he took in the bathroom or on the back patio. The sudden changes in plans whenever she needed something. During dinner, I tried to bring it up again. "Honey, I understand your sister needs help, but 6 months is a long time." "And what about Mark? Where is her husband in all this?" Ethan chewed slowly, avoiding my gaze. "Mark, I don't know. I think he's a little overwhelmed with all the responsibility. Jess thought it would be better to be away from him for a while." That sounded strange, very strange. Every time I'd seen Mark, he seemed like a responsible man, affectionate with his wife, a hard-working contractor who always spoke of Jess with admiration. Why would a new father be so overwhelmed by his own son that his wife needed to flee their home? The possibility of domestic violence crossed my mind, but Mark had never shown any aggressive signs. On the contrary, he was kind, polite, almost shy. He always treated Jess like a queen on the few occasions I saw them together. That night, I lay in bed next to Ethan, with a knot in my stomach. He fell asleep quickly, as he always did when he wanted to avoid difficult conversations. I stayed awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand why this unilateral decision bothered me so much. It wasn't just the extra work. It wasn't just the invasion of our space. There was something more, an unease I couldn't name. a feeling that important pieces of the puzzle were being hidden from me. On Friday, I tried to talk to my friend Emily during our lunch break at school. She's known me since college and can read my moods better than anyone. "Sarah, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's up?" I told her the whole situation. Emily listened in silence, her brow furrowing as I spoke. When I finished, she shook her head. "Girl, this whole thing sounds sketchy as hell. A husband making major decisions about his own house without you is a huge lack of respect. And that story about Jess needing to get away from Mark makes no sense." Emily's words echoed in my mind all day, during my classes. While explaining fractions to my fourth graders, my thoughts kept returning to our conversation. Why was Ethan being so authoritarian? Why didn't he give me a choice? And why couldn't Jess count on her own husband for support? Saturday arrived thick with tension. Ethan left early to pick up some of Jess's things, and didn't return until late afternoon. He brought in 2 large suitcases and a portable crib. Seeing those items in our living room, the reality of the situation hit me like a punch to the gut. "Where are they going to sleep?" I asked, looking at our limited space with new eyes. "In the guest room," he replied, without looking at me. Guest room referred to the tiny corner we used as a junk room, where we stored old boxes, out-of-season clothes, and stuff we rarely used. We spent the entire afternoon reorganizing everything, setting up a cramped twin bed, and assembling the baby's crib. While we worked, I watched Ethan handle Leo's baby clothes with a strange familiarity. He held each tiny onesie with excessive care, checking sizes, organizing by color. For someone who had never shown any interest in babies, he seemed to know a newborn's needs very well. "Have you seen Leo yet?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, yeah. I went to visit him in the hospital when he was born." Another piece of information he had omitted. Ethan visited his sister in the maternity ward and hadn't told me. He usually recounted even the most insignificant details of his day. Why hide something as simple as a hospital visit? Saturday night was even more unsettling. Ethan was agitated. He kept checking his phone. Got out of bed several times for water or to use the bathroom. When he finally fell asleep, he started talking in his sleep. Something that had never happened before. I couldn't make out the words, but his tone was filled with anxiety. Sunday dawned gray, perfectly matching my mood. Ethan woke up early, showered, and got dressed as if he were going on an important date. He used the cologne I'd given him for our wedding anniversary, the one he saved for special occasions. "I'm going to get them," he announced, grabbing the car keys. "Don't you want me to come with you?" "No need. You can use the time to finish getting the house ready." There it was again. That order disguised as a suggestion. Finish getting the house ready. As if the house wasn't already immaculate, as I always kept it. As if my only function was to be a perfect housewife, ready to receive guests. After he left, I was alone with my turbulent thoughts. I walked through the house, trying to imagine what it would be like to share this space with 2 more people for the next 6 months. Jess using our bathroom, leaving baby products scattered on the counter. Leo crying in the middle of the night, interrupting my already limited sleep. The dirty diapers, the bottles, the smell of sour milk permeating our living room. But there was something beyond the practical discomfort that disturbed me. An inner voice whispered that there was much more to this story than I was being told. Loose details danced in my mind. Jess's coldness, Mark's inexplicable absence, Ethan's excessive anxiety, the rushed decisions. I sat on the living room couch and tried to organize the events chronologically. Jess got pregnant 9 months ago. Throughout the pregnancy, Ethan started going out more, always with excuses related to her. I have to take Jess to the doctor. I'm going to help assemble the crib. She's having morning sickness and needs help. At the time, I thought his fraternal care was sweet. What a dedicated brother, I thought. What a close-knit family. But now connecting the dots, that excessive care took on a different, more intimate, more suspicious connotation. Ethan's phone rang in the bedroom, interrupting my train of thought. He had forgotten it at home, something completely out of character for someone glued to their phone. I went to silence it, but the screen showed a message notification. It was from Jess. My heart started racing. Technically, I shouldn't look at his personal messages, but curiosity and that growing feeling that something was wrong were stronger. With trembling hands, I unlocked the phone. What I saw in the following lines would change the course of my life forever, destroying in seconds the trust I had taken years to build, and forcing me to face a brutal truth I could never have imagined possible. My fingers trembled as I held the phone. The first message that appeared on the screen was like a punch to the gut. Love, I'm already packing. I can't wait to be close to you again. Love. She had called my husband Love. I swiped up, my heart beating so hard I could hear it pounding in my ears. The conversation continued. Thanks for convincing Sarah. You really managed to get her to accept our story. 6 months will be a short time, but at least we'll be together every day. Every word was like a stab wound. Our story. Together every day. What the hell was happening? My mind refused to process what I was reading, but my eyes kept scanning the messages, each one more devastating than the last. I can't wait for you to hold Leo in your arms. He needs to get to know his father better. The phone slipped from my hands and hit the floor with a thud. Father? She had written, father. Leo wasn't Mark's son. He was Ethan's son. My husband had a child with his own sister. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, trying to breathe. The room seemed to spin around me. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of a life I thought I knew. 12 years with a man I loved and respected. All of it crumbling in a matter of seconds. I picked up the phone from the floor, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I needed to see more. I needed to understand the extent of this betrayal. I opened the message history and started reading from the beginning. Each message was a deeper stab into my soul. March of last year. Jess, are you sure you want to go through with this? What if Sarah suspects something? Her reply. She'll never guess. We're very discreet, and besides, she trusts you blindly. Tears began to cloud my vision. I really had trusted him, without reservation. It never crossed my mind to check his schedule, read his messages, or question his outings. For me, marriage was synonymous with mutual trust. April. The test is positive, Ethan. I'm pregnant. His reply. That's wonderful. Our baby. I'll take care of both of you. I promise. May. Mark suspects the baby isn't his. He says the dates don't add up. Don't worry, love. When Leo is born, we'll find a way for Mark to accept paternity. June. I need to invent a fight with Mark to justify why I'm going to spend a few months away from him after the birth. Do you think Sarah will agree to have me at your house? Leave it to me. I'll talk to her. Talk to me. It hadn't even been a conversation. It had been a disguised imposition, a calculated manipulation to turn me into an unwitting accomplice to their disgusting farce. July. I miss you. When Sarah goes to work, could you come visit me? It's too risky, Jess, but when the baby is born and you're at our house, we can be together every day. August. I think Mark suspects us. Yesterday, he asked me why you come around so much. Don't worry, he'll get over it soon. September. Leo is born. Love, he looks just like you. The same eyes, the same chin. There's no way to deny he's your son. I can't wait to meet our boy. October. I managed to convince Mark to let me spend a few months at my brother's house. I told him I need help with the baby, and that you and Sarah are the only people I trust. Perfect. I'll talk to Sarah tomorrow. And he had talked, in the cruelest, most authoritarian way possible, making me the mandatory nanny for the son he had with his lover, who also happened to be his sister. Nausea churned in my stomach. I ran to the bathroom and threw up everything I had. My body was rejecting this reality, as if it were a deadly poison. Incest, betrayal, lies, manipulation, all mixed together in a devastating combination that destroyed every good memory I had of our relationship. I staggered back to the bedroom. The phone was still there on the bed, a silent testament to all this filth. I sat down again and kept reading, knowing each message would be more painful than the last. There were photos, too. Photos of them together in places I didn't recognize. Her pregnant, him with his hand on her belly, conspiratorial smiles, kisses on the mouth, images of an intimacy that should have existed between him and me, but was being shared with another woman, with his sister. One photo particularly caught my eye. It was recent, probably from last week. They were in what looked like a hospital room. She was holding the baby, him beside her, stroking the child's face. The caption read, "Our family finally together." Our family. They saw themselves as a family. And what was I in all this? The fool who was going to take care of the baby while they lived out their forbidden passion under my own roof. I looked at the clock on the wall. Ethan had been gone for 2 hours. He wouldn't be long now. He'd return with them. With the lover and the bastard son I would be forced to welcome into my home. To feed. To care for. To watch grow. Knowing that every feature on his face was a constant reminder of my husband's betrayal. I got up and started pacing the room. I needed to make a decision. Confront them as soon as they arrived. Pretend I knew nothing and find a lawyer first. Pack my bags and just disappear. Every option seemed terrible. If I confronted them immediately, they could deny everything, invent explanations, make me out to be crazy. If I feigned ignorance, I'd have to live with them day after day, playing the part of the good wife and welcoming sister-in-law, while dying inside from rage and disgust. I looked at the phone again. I wanted to understand exactly how long this had been going on, how it started, if anyone else was involved. I found even older conversations from 2 years ago. "Jess, we can't keep doing this. You're my sister." "For God's sake, Ethan, you know we're not blood-related. My dad adopted you when you were 15. There's nothing wrong with what we feel for each other." Adopted. Ethan was adopted. In 12 years of marriage, he had never told me. Another lie. Another secret locked away. But that information at least explained why they didn't see a moral problem with their relationship. Still, I'm married to Sarah. It's not fair to her. Do you love me or not, Ethan? Because if you love me, we'll find a way. If you don't, I'll stop coming after you right now. From that point on, the messages showed a divided man gradually giving in to pressure and emotional blackmail. At first, he resisted, spoke of me with affection, said he didn't want to hurt me, but as the months went by, his defenses crumbled, until he finally stopped mentioning me in their conversations. It was like watching the end of my marriage in slow motion, through messages that documented every step of the betrayal. Seeing the exact moment I ceased to be a concern for him, when my feelings no longer mattered, when I became just an obstacle to be managed. A message from January of this year sent a chill down my spine. Does Sarah suspect anything? Yesterday, she asked why you're going out so much. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Sarah is very naive, very trusting. She'll believe any explanation I give her. Naive, trusting. He spoke of me as if I were a convenient idiot, easy to deceive. And the worst part was he was right. I had believed every lie. I had swallowed every cheap excuse, accepted every change in behavior as something normal. The sound of keys in the lock made me jump. They were here. I quickly cleared the messages from the screen, locked the phone, and placed it exactly where Ethan had left it. My heart pounded. In a few seconds, I would be face to face with the two traitors, having to feign normality while I was dying inside. I heard his voice in the entryway. "Sarah, we're here." I took a deep breath. I glanced at myself in the mirror and tried to compose a neutral expression. I left the bedroom with trembling legs, walking down each step of the staircase as if I were heading to my own funeral. In the living room, Ethan was helping Jess take off her coat. She was holding the baby and smiling at Ethan in a way I had never seen before. It was an intimate smile, full of complicity. The smile of a woman in love looking at the father of her child. "Hi, Sarah," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Thanks for having us." Having us? As if I'd had a choice, as if it wasn't all a farce set up so they could live together without raising suspicion. "Hi, Jess. Welcome," I managed to say, surprised at how normal my voice sounded. Ethan came over and gave me a kiss on the cheek, the same kiss he gave me every day, but which now made me sick to my stomach. "Sarah, this is Leo." I looked at the baby and felt like I'd been sucker punched. The resemblance to Ethan was undeniable. The same light eyes, the same nose shape, the same dimple in the chin. Anyone who saw them together would immediately know they were father and son. "He's beautiful," I lied, forcing a smile. "Do you want to hold him?" Jess offered. "No, that's okay," I replied too quickly. "You must be tired from the trip. I'll show you to your room." As I led them up the stairs, I could feel their eyes on my back. Would they notice something different in my behavior? Could they see the storm raging inside me? In the room, Jess placed the baby in the crib and began to unpack her suitcases, as if she owned the place. Ethan watched her with an attention he never showed me. Every gesture she made seemed to fascinate him. "I'll leave you to get settled," I said, getting out of there before my mask of normality shattered. I went back to the kitchen and leaned against the counter, trying to control my breathing. 6 months. How would I manage to pretend for 6 whole months that I knew nothing? How would I sleep every night in bed next to Ethan, knowing he was in love with someone else? How would I look at that baby every day, knowing he represented the living proof of my husband's betrayal? But then a different feeling began to take hold. It was no longer just pain and despair. It was rage, a cold, calculating rage growing inside my chest, like a flame finding fuel. They thought I was naive. They thought they could use me as a nanny and a maid while they lived out their love story at my expense. They thought I would passively accept being humiliated in my own home. They were dead wrong. I started to realize that knowing the truth gave me an advantage they couldn't imagine. They would let their guard down, relax, think their plan had worked perfectly. And while they reveled in their farce, I would have time to plan my response, because there was going to be a response. Of that, I was sure. No one was going to make a fool out of me and get away with it. No one was going to destroy my life and then force me to collaborate in their betrayal. I looked out the kitchen window and saw Mark getting out of his truck. He was probably bringing more of Jess's things. Poor man. Just like me, he was being deceived, manipulated, used as a pawn in a game whose rules he didn't know. It was in that moment that I had my first idea of how to start fighting back. Mark, he was the key. He had as much right to know the truth as I did, and maybe together we could teach those two a lesson they would never forget. I watched Mark through the window as he unloaded a car seat from the back of his truck. His movements were slow, heavy, like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Even from a distance, you could tell something was broken in him. I took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. I went out the back door and approached him in the side yard, out of sight of anyone inside the house. "Mark?" I called out softly. He looked up, and what I saw in his eyes shook me. They weren't just tired eyes. They were the eyes of someone who had lost all hope. Dark circles shadowed his face, and he had lost a lot of weight since the last time I'd seen him. "Hey, Sarah. Sorry to bother you like this. Just dropping off the last of Jess's things." His voice sounded hollow, lifeless. "Mark, can I ask you a question?" My heart was pounding. "Are you sure Leo is your son?" His expression changed instantly. A mix of pain and suspicion crossed his face. He set the car seat down and looked at me intently. "Why would you ask that, Sarah?" "Because I found out some things today that have me very worried. Things that involve you, too." Mark glanced nervously toward the house, then turned his attention back to me. "What kind of things?" There was no turning back now. I had to tell him everything. Ethan left his phone at home. A message from Jess came in today, and I ended up seeing things I shouldn't have. His face went pale. "What things, Sarah? For God's sake, just tell me." "Mark, sit down." I pointed to the wooden bench under the big maple tree. "What I'm about to tell you is going to be very hard to hear." He sat down slowly, as if his bones had turned to lead. I sat next to him and began to recount everything I had discovered. With each revelation, I watched Mark crumble a little more. "Love letters between them?" he muttered when I told him about the intimate conversations. "How long?" "From what I saw, at least 2 years." "But Mark, there's more. A lot more." I told him about the photos, about their plans for her to stay at our house, about the mentions of Leo as Ethan's son. With each piece of information, Mark buried his face deeper into his hands. "I knew it," he whispered. "Oh my God, I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined it was this." "What do you mean you knew?" Mark looked up, silent tears streaming down his face. "Sarah, I've been noticing changes in Jess for months. She became cold with me, distant. When she got pregnant, I was ecstatic, but she showed no joy at all." He paused to take a ragged breath before continuing. "Throughout the entire pregnancy, she made excuses not to be intimate with me. She said she had morning sickness, that she didn't feel well, that it was better to avoid it. Then when the doctor gave the all clear, she kept rejecting me." My heart broke hearing that Mark was a good, hard-working man who loved his wife, and he was being destroyed by a betrayal he didn't even fully comprehend. "There's more," he continued, his voice cracking. "At the hospital after Leo was born, a nurse made a strange comment. She said the baby didn't look anything like me, that he looked more like one of the mother's relatives. At the time, I thought it was nothing, but later it stuck with me. Mark, I need to show you something." I pulled my phone out of my pocket. During our conversation, I had taken a few pictures of the screen of Ethan's phone. "Look at this." I showed him one of the photos where Ethan was holding Leo. The resemblance was astonishing, undeniable. Mark was silent for several long seconds analyzing the image. "He's identical to him," he murmured. "How could I have been so blind?" "You weren't blind, Mark. You were deceived by 2 very calculating people. They planned everything down to the last detail, so neither of us would suspect." I then told him about all the times Ethan had left the house with excuses related to Jess, about the mysterious calls, about his insistence on convincing me to let her stay. "Sarah, I feel like the biggest idiot in the world," Mark vented. "I worked double shifts throughout the whole pregnancy to buy things for the baby. I assembled the crib, painted the nursery, bought the stroller, clothes, diapers, all to raise another man's child. My own rage grew even stronger hearing this. It wasn't just betrayal, it was pure cruelty. To let a man prepare emotionally and financially for fatherhood, to let him fall in love with the idea of a family, only to find out it was all a lie. And there's another thing," Mark continued. "In the last few months, Jess started talking really badly about you. She said you were annoying, controlling, that you didn't like her. Now I understand why. She was laying the groundwork so I wouldn't find it strange when she said she wanted to stay at your house for a while. She said, even though you were a bit difficult, you were the only person who could help her with the baby." Another layer of manipulation. Jess had poisoned Mark against me, so he wouldn't question the real motives for her move into our home. What a cruel, calculating woman. Mark, there's something I want to know. Do you remember any specific moment when you suspected something between them? He thought for a few moments. Yeah, I do. It was at my mother-in-law's birthday barbecue, about 6 months ago. I was in the kitchen helping her when I looked out the window and saw Ethan and Jess talking at the back of the yard. They were very close. She was touching his arm. They were both laughing quietly. And what did you do? I went outside to see what they were laughing about. When I got closer, they separated quickly and completely changed the subject. Ethan made up some story about planning a surprise for you. Something about your birthday. My birthday had been 3 months before that barbecue. It was a completely nonsensical excuse. But at the time, Mark believed it. Just as I would have. After that day, I started paying more attention. Jess always found a way to be near your husband at family gatherings. When you guys arrived, she'd greet him with a big hug. When you left, she'd take forever to say goodbye. Every detail Mark recounted was like a piece fitting into a morbid puzzle. Signs that had been there all along, right in front of our eyes, but we couldn't interpret them because we trusted the wrong people. Sarah, can I ask you a question now? Mark said after a silence. Of course. Are you going to tell them you found out? That question had been tormenting me since I read the first messages. I haven't decided yet. I'm weighing my options, because I'll tell you one thing. His voice grew firmer, charged with a determination that wasn't there at the beginning of our conversation. They can't get away with this. What they've done to us is inhuman. I completely agree, but we have to be smart. There's no point in acting on impulse and giving them a chance to invent more lies, or escape the consequences. Mark stood up and started pacing. Sarah, do you realize that if they're here in your house, they're going to be together every single day? They'll be able to touch each other, kiss, do everything a couple does while you're sleeping in the next room. I hadn't thought about it so bluntly, but he was right. That's what was going to happen. I would be forced to indirectly witness their romance, to hear intimate conversations, maybe even sounds I didn't want to hear coming from the room where she was staying. Mark, is there anything you can do to help me? I asked, an idea beginning to form in my mind. Anything, Sarah. After everything you've told me today. Anything. Can you pretend you know nothing for a few days? Play the worried husband. Come here to visit Jess and the baby. Ask some strategic questions. What for? To see how far their nerve goes. I want to understand if they'll keep up the charade even with you around, or if they'll slip up and confirm everything we've already discovered. Mark stopped pacing and looked at me with admiration. You're a lot smarter than they think you are, aren't you? We're about to find out. Just then, I heard footsteps coming from the house. Ethan appeared on the back porch and waved at us. Mark, didn't see you pull up. How are you? The hypocrisy in his voice made me want to throw up again. There was my husband cordially greeting the man he had betrayed in the most despicable way possible. Hey, Ethan. I'm good, thanks. Just came to drop off the last of Jess's things. Mark managed to maintain a normal tone, but I noticed his fists were clenched. Great. She's upstairs resting with Leo. Want to go up and see them? Sure, thanks. The 3 of us went inside. Ethan led the way, Mark in the middle, me last. With every step, my anxiety grew. How would Mark react seeing his wife with the baby now, knowing the child wasn't his? In the bedroom, Jess was sitting on the bed nursing Leo. When she saw Mark, her face showed no joy or affection, just a cold, formal politeness. Hey, hun. Honorably, she called Mark hun. But I'd seen her use the word love for Ethan in the messages. The woman used terms of endearment, like they were disposable. Yeah, I brought it. It's all in the truck. Mark approached the bed but kept his distance. How are you feeling? Tired, but good. Ethan and Sarah are being so nice to have us here. I watched the interaction between the three of them. Ethan, standing in a corner of the room, watching Jess's every move with the eyes of a man in love. Mark trying to show interest in his wife and the baby, but clearly uncomfortable. Jess, dividing her attention between the two men in a calculated way. "Can I hold Leo?" Mark asked. "Of course." Jess handed the baby to Mark, and it was painful to watch that scene. A man holding a child that wasn't even his, with such affection, while the real father watched from a distance, feigning indifference. "He's growing fast," Mark commented, analyzing the features of Leo's face. "Yeah, he really is," Ethan chimed in. Babies grow in the blink of an eye. The naturalness with which he spoke about his own son's development, pretending to be just an interested uncle, showed the level of psychopathy of the two. How could they lie so shamelessly to our faces? "Sarah, you want to hold him?" Mark offered me the baby. I hesitated for a few seconds. Holding that child would be like embracing the physical manifestation of my husband's betrayal, but refusing would be suspicious. Sure. I took Leo in my arms and felt a confusing mix of emotions. On one hand, he was just an innocent baby who wasn't to blame for his parents' sins. On the other, every feature of his little face reminded me that my marriage was a sham. "He's precious, Jess," I managed to say. "Thanks. I hope he won't be too much trouble for you guys." As if she were a temporary guest, leaving her child in the care of volunteer nannies. Her coldness was stunning. After a few minutes of forced conversation, Mark said his goodbyes. "I have to get going. Have to work early tomorrow." I walked him to the door, leaving Ethan and Jess alone in the room. On the way, I whispered, "I'll call you tomorrow. We need to talk more." He nodded discreetly, understanding the message. When I went back upstairs, I walked in on a scene that made my blood run cold. Ethan was sitting on the edge of the bed, Jess lying beside him, and they were talking in low voices while he stroked her face. When they saw me, they separated quickly. I was just explaining to Jess how the house routine works. Ethan lied without blinking. "Oh, great. Well, I think it's best if I let you two rest. We can talk more about organizing things for the next few days tomorrow." I went downstairs with trembling legs. The situation was even worse than I imagined. They weren't even going to bother being discreet. In less than 2 hours in my house, they were already touching, caressing, acting like a couple in love. Dinner that night was torture. Ethan went out of his way to be the perfect host, serving Jess, asking if she needed anything, praising the food I had prepared as if it were a special menu for an important guest. "Sarah, you've always been an excellent cook," Jess commented. "I remember your food was the best at the Sunday family dinners." Fake. Unbelievably fake. She had never praised my cooking before. On the contrary, she always ate little and complained it was bland or too salty. "Thanks," I replied, forcing a smile. After dinner, they went up to her room together, claiming she needed to organize the baby's things, and Ethan was going to help. I was left alone in the kitchen, washing dishes and planning my next steps. The full truth was finally clear. They weren't just lovers. They were two sociopaths who had concocted an elaborate charade to destroy 2 lives without the slightest remorse. They had planned every move, every lie, every manipulation. But now I knew everything, and so did Mark. It was 2 against 2, and they had no idea the storm that was brewing. On Monday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., as usual, but my mind had been racing for hours. I had spent the entire night plotting every detail of what was to come. Ethan slept soundly beside me, oblivious to the storm forming inside the woman who shared his bed. As I got ready for work, I looked at his relaxed face, those features that once filled me with love and now only caused repulsion. How could he sleep so peacefully after turning our home into a nest of lies? I went down to the kitchen and made coffee, thinking about the sounds I had heard during the night. Footsteps in the hallway, muffled whispers, the door to her room opening and closing several times. Ethan had made excuses to go to the bathroom 3 times during the night, and each of those bathroom breaks lasted at least 15 minutes. Jess appeared in the kitchen as I was finishing my coffee. She was wearing a robe I didn't recognize, probably one of the intimate pieces she had brought to impress my husband. "Good morning, Sarah. You're always up so early." "Work. You know, I have to be at school by 7. I kept my tone neutral, professional. "Oh, right. Thanks for letting us stay here. I know it can't be easy having 2 extra people in your routine." Her hypocrisy was nauseating. "Don't worry about it. Family is family." As I left the house, I called Mark before I even got to school. He answered on the first ring. "Sarah, did something happen?" "Mark, can you talk?" "I'm on my way to work, but we need to figure out our next steps." "Yeah, I can. I didn't sleep at all last night, thinking about everything you told me yesterday." "Me neither." "Listen, are you working today?" "Yes, but I can slip away during my lunch."